Everyone. So today's topic is GP 2013 Web Client. And I just want to start with the agenda for this morning. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go over the web client and just give you some overall information about it, talk a little bit about the architecture and deployment options, and then talk about the security and management, and then finally go through some next steps. So GP 2013 really moves to the cloud in this with the GP 2013 web client. So you always had the ability to go ahead and do public cloud hosting or some partner hosting, and now this is just going ahead and taking it to the next level. So it's also allowing us to do some partner hosting, but also be able to host it internally in-house. The ISVs are all on board and they're all working with the web client now. And it really gives you an enhanced user experience. So it's gone ahead and taken the interface that you're seeing in GP and just give it a really modern look. So it's starting to look a lot more like Office. So you'll start seeing that the screens have changed. I mean, the information you're expecting is there. It's just got a fresher look. And that's going to really ease your implementation. So what GP 2013 Web Client does is it basically is Dynamics GP in a browser. And it's definitely secure, and all the communications is fully encrypted by HTTPS, and it really works the way you would expect. So the look and the feel is the same, except it's got like a fresh coat of paint on it, and it's available wherever you are. So if you want to go ahead and just go ahead and work on your iPad, or you're going into a meeting and you just need to run a report quickly and you're on your mobile phone, anywhere you can get to a browser, you can basically get to GP now with the web client. And it looks and feels the same. So it's got a fresher GUI, but it's got the fields that you expect, and you know how to use it already. And because this is such a massive undertaking, there is a phased release of the different modules. So the web client is focused intently on reducing the hosting costs. And this is actually huge. We've been talking to people the last couple of years, and IT and everyone's, talking about the cloud and just moving everything to the cloud, which is attractive for so many reasons until you get the costing. And then the costing just becomes prohibitive. So this is actually making the GP in the cloud a cost-effective option. And also, while it's doing that, you're not suffering any quality. So you're maintaining your quality user experience and the extensibility that customers expect. And by that, I mean your customizations are going to hold and your ISV applications will work, so if you're using any third parties, they will just go ahead and weave right into it seamlessly. And then the performance. The performance is comparable now to terminal services, and that's the good news. So Microsoft went back and they said, okay, we need to keep that speed. We need to have the speed as if you were in terminal services or Citrix. And they've actually, the good news is they've been able to achieve that. And the even better news is it scales better. So we can be as fast as terminal services, and as you need to add more users and you extend the reach of GP, you don't have to go back and redo the infrastructure. So that's all a bunch of good news. So as I mentioned, it's going to be on a phased release schedule. So if you look at each one of these blocks over here, you're going to see one is going to build on the other. So phase one, which we're already through, financials and distribution. So they had to get the core accounting. They just sort of prioritized core accounting goes first. Without your general ledger, the ability to invoice your customers, there's no, that would not be a viable option for you. Once we got financials and distribution, they stacked on top of that HR and payroll. It's probably a good idea to pay your people, so that became a priority as well. And then on top of that, projects was in phase three. And phase three, so just to give you a sense of where we're at right now, phase three is, the project is slotted for the fall. So we're probably about a little bit more than a month away from projects coming out. They are ahead of schedule, which is good news. So phase one and phase two have happened already. And if you're using projects, you might have to just wait a little bit longer, but not too much. And by the end of the year, this should be fully rolled out. So if you're using field services, you're probably looking at the later fall. And then by the end of the year, if you're using manufacturing, you can tap into that. Okay, so the release to manufacturer functionality. So this is just to give you an idea of what's been moved across. So because GP has got so many modules, which is the good news, there was a lot of work in reworking all of this to give it the new interface and make it the web client have all the modules. So the first one, which is the first phase, it's happened. You're seeing the system happened. Smart lists are still there, integrations are still there, all your reports are still there, as well as emails, smart lists, navigation list builders, Excel report builder. So if you get a look over here at this, you can start to see that there's quite a bit. eConnect is working. Your integrations will be out of the box happening for you. If you're using Modifier, that takes the ride as well. So this is what's happened in the first pass, which we're well beyond at this point. And so then some more things about the individual modules. So financials went through the first pass already. And when they talk about financials, it's not just the general ledger and payables. It's things like EFT and lockbox and refund checks and analytical accounting if you're using that, if you're using the management report or web viewer. So this is just to give you a sense of how much has been done in just the first initial pass, which is up and running today. And then in distribution, in addition to having the core modules of inventory and sales order and purchase order, the add-ons that you're seeing now, because the licensing of GP 2013 is now changed. And so when you get a license, you own all the modules. And there is an extensive list. And so this is what's happening right now in the web client. So advanced distribution and advanced picking and all of those are now available in the web client in the distribution series. Okay, so let's just turn our attention a little bit and talk about security. So some items about it is, so it's a fully encrypted login. So there is encryption happening all over the place. So I mean, the idea of being able to use GP anywhere, but your accounting information is quite sensitive. So if you're riding Amtrak or in a hotel, is it okay to use that internet service to access your accounting information? And so there is some encryption happening. And so all of the client-server interactions are encrypted, and they're using secure sockets where certificates are required. And we'll talk about a little bit about that in a second. And it's using Windows authentication. So it has access to the landing site. So you don't have to use the SQL logins anymore. You can actually use Windows authentication. And all of the GP security remains. So you don't have to redo your security. So if someone does not have access to a company, they do not have access to a module, or even if you're using field level, that is all going to be carried through in the security model of the web client. Okay, so the certificates. So the CA certificates are recommended under type. So certificates are kind of, you get what you pay for. So if you're in a private internet environment, it's going to be a lot more secure than if you're somewhere publicly. Self-signed are supported, and it must be of a type server authentication. And then a little bit about the installation of the certificates. We use website and all session hosts, and they're placed in computer accounts personal store. And there's a different certificate if WMC is on its own website. And some of the specifics, you can use Wildcard or use SAN to cover servers, and you can use certificate for elevated trust is a different type. Okay, so just a little bit about the elevated trust mode. So you're going to need this. So you're going to need to enable this because you're going to need it for most printing functions. So you'll see a little icon in the lower corner, and it'll always tell you in the status bar if it's not elevated. So we're going to need the elevated trust if you're planning on either printing items, using some of the BI. By that I mean Business Analyzer, Excel Report Builder, etc. And if you're going to do file opens and saves, so Excel reports, for instance, if you're going to be using Excel Report Builder, you're going to need that elevated trust. And if you're going to be using SmartList and taking it out to Excel, you're going to need that as well. And so it sounds like most people, unless you're just really in a read-only mode, or most people are going to want to go ahead and get that. So to enable it, we need to use the registry entries required. And the web client app does the signing certificate install. And there's an MSI installer provided to do this, and it can also be pushed to the add group policy. Okay, so I just wanted to give you, because I know this morning it's just more, we've got so much information we just want to share. This is very informational. So I just wanted to give you a couple of screenshots to show you what this web client sign-in looks like. So it's still got the GP. You can brand it on the front page however you want. And you can see here you're signing in using your Windows authentication, but you really are presenting GP in a browser experience. And then to give you an idea of the way the GUI looks over here, here's a sales transaction, and you can see it's got a little bit of a fresher look. It's got things along the side, a little more like Office, and you're actually in the internet right now running GP. And you could have a mix inside your organization. Some people can choose to use a web client, and some people can go ahead and use the rich client on their desktop. So this is a great option, and it's available to you just by owning GP 2013. Okay, so there's going to be some web client components to do. So on the server side, there's the web client site. So we have set up a site where you can access GP 2013. And then there's going to be a management console site. So you're going to need to be able to go ahead and manage your users, and someone's session gets stuck, or you need to kick someone out, or something happens. So there is a management console that an administrator typically does. And that's going to have the a sessions essential and also tenant services there, and that's also where you're going to meet the management proxy services. So then there's the session host, and this is where you're hosting it, and that'll have the GP installations and the session service. And then there's a couple of optional hosts, which are the session central and the tenant services. So the themes that are kind of coming here is it's secure, it's recoverable. So if something happens and someone wants to call you and say, my session is locked, or whatever might go awry, that you can go ahead and go to the console and take care of it and administrate it. It's familiar, so it looks like GP. If they're used to doing accounts payable data entry, they're going to just be able to know exactly what to do. And it's actually very, very scalable at this point. Okay, so this is just a little bit about the architecture here. So what happens is that the browser the user uses it inside a browser. The browser is doing a little bit of IIS to connect. A little bit about the architecture. So the web client launch process. So you're basically using GP inside the browser. So the first thing is just showing the Internet Explorer, or whatever your browser is. It's doing a little bit with IIS, and then there's some software in the background that's controlling the sessions. And then on the server side, what we're seeing is you've got the session host, and then on that box is GP, and then of course GP is being stored in SQL. Okay, so there are some deployment options. So let's talk about the different deployment options. If you have a low number of users, and by low we mean like 20 and under, then you can do it on-premise, so that you can go ahead and set it up. You don't have to go ahead and do it to a public cloud or even go to partners. You can actually host it yourself inside, which makes it really affordable, which has been the biggest pain up until now. So it's usually on-premise. It's a small number of users. Again, we're talking about 20 or under, and all components can actually be on a single server. So if you look at what's on there, we've got GP on the server, we've got SQL on the server, we've got all of the web clients on there, we've got the console on there, and we've got the web clients. So this is an alternative to a Citrix type of deployment. It's also terminal server, so you don't have to go ahead and do that, and people can just use it anywhere. And this is not multi-tenant, meaning that you're not running multiple companies. You can run companies within your GP, but you don't have something that's more of a partner hosting. So there's other deployment options we can scale up. And usually this is on-premise, and you can use both the desktop clients and the web client. So it's not an either-or thing. You can deploy the web client and also use your desktops as well. And if we're using externally hosted, you would have few or no desktop clients. So this is if you do not want to have to maintain GP and install it on people's boxes. This is a much better option. And this is for a larger number of users. Again, we're talking about 20 and over. And this is separate session hosts, and it's not multi-tenant. And when we talk about multi-tenant, we're going to be talking about partner hosted. So when we say multi-tenant, this is where company A, B, and C all are on our servers, and we're hosting it for you, which is an option. If you really just want to say, you know what, we don't want to be involved in the maintenance and setup of it, we just want to know how to use it, and you guys take care of everything else, that is certainly an option. So this is partner hosted, including AKA, and it can be managed by partner or self-deployed. And this is when you have a larger number of users, or there's a kind of a mix and match in these offerings. So everything is not quite so absolute, but these are just some general guidelines. And this is where we're doing some load balances with failover. So if you're in a ramping up company and you just need to scale, this might be a better option. And this is multi-tenant services are used. So you won't have to worry about installing the software or updating the software. It's just all done for you. So this is actually the cloudiest of the cloud offerings. Okay, so there is some web client management. So there's some updates, and they need to be done to all session hosts. And multi-tenant can incrementally do that by tenant. So we can, if we're hosting 8 or 10 companies, we can determine who gets updates when. Each user logged in has 1 or more sessions. So it's like terminal services where if I go ahead and I'm running a report and I nip out and I come back in, I log back in again, it takes right where my session left off. So that means that if my machine goes down, I'm in the middle of entering an accounts payable batch by way of example, and something goes on my machine, I just go over to the desktop next to me, log into the URL, log into my GP, I'm right back where I was. So that's definitely convenient. And you can perform logging for support issues. So we're able to do session shares, and that can be very, very helpful in support issues without having to go into some WebEx or link or something. And we can also terminate sessions as well. So if someone gets locked in, this is where you use the web client to go in there and terminate them. So each user has to be a domain user. If they're not in your domain, then we're not going to be able to enable the web client. And the licensing is the same as the desktop. Users can use either one. So you'll have your named users in GP 2013. They'll choose their experience, whether it's desktop, web client, or they could potentially be both. And it still prevents the same user company logging in twice. So because they're named users, you can't log in as Sally Sue and then have the next person share that login, the next person. They're going to have to be, they are licensed unnamed users. And they can be in 2 different companies at the same time, which is actually, if you're doing multiple companies, that's quite convenient. Okay, so the Web Management Console, this is a web application. It's in a snap-in model, and it's got a number of different things. The Session Manager and the Tenant Manager, those are snap-ins provided. And the custom snap-ins are possible, so you can write your own. And it is secure access, so there's 2 levels of access. There's both a tenant and system admins, and this is only done by group membership. So if you're not a member of either one of those admin groups, you're not going to be able to get to it. Okay, so some things about the snap-in for the session manager. So the first thing is to inform, so all sessions by session host. So this gives them a console where they can just go in there and see what's going on. And the relevant details on the user, start time, etc. And some session server load information. So if people say it's slowing down or whatever the complaint might be, they can get some stats and see where the bottleneck is. This is also the place where their management is done. So if there's inactive session servers, we can go in and do that. We can also terminate some sessions in this console. And then this is also a place where we can do some troubleshooting. We can log in options for script, runtime, and timing per user session. And we can also do some screen shares here and help people with any support issues they might need. So the Tenant Manager snap-in only needs to be used if multi-tenant services are installed. So if you're doing this privately on premises, this is not going to be applicable. This is probably more applicable to the partner hosting model. And here where we can go ahead and create tenants or manage tenants. And if you say, okay, I've got a new operation that I'm starting, and we can just go in there and just get a new company set up for you or get a new set of users set up for you. So this makes getting up and running in a day as opposed to a couple of weeks of procuring hardware and getting the software installed, etc. And you are able to go ahead and do some customizations. So Dexterity is fully supported. So if you've got any customizations in GP, they are going to carry through. So there's no worries there. Also, if you have any modified screens, Modifier is a program that allows you to change the wording on screens. Modified forms will render, but Visual Basic is not supported here. So there also, you can use your Visual Studio tools. There's add-on code will function. You can edit in the config file where you're needed to enable, but there is no support for WinForms. And all of the reporting works. So Report Writer reports work, your Word templates work, and SSRS works. So that's a lot of good news there. And this is just some of the VBA custom screens just to kind of show you how it looks. And some of the Visual Studio custom screens as well.